Hey, what's good, Skins Nation? What's going on? My name is Fred Watson. Welcome to Redskin Facts, History, and News. Just give a little bio about myself. From the Washington, D.C. area. Grew up in Alexandria. Been a Redskin fan since I was 7 years old. Die hard, HTTR for life. Hoop, hoop, Hail Nation. Uh, let's get into it. Today we're going to talk about a little history, and at the end, we'll give some facts. I'll have some questions for you, trivia questions, and give you a little brief summary on the latest Redskin news, and also go over the schedule of who we play this year. All right, with that said, let's go back in time. If you didn't know, the Redskins have been in existence for 87 years. We've won 5 NFL championships. Of course, we've won 3 Super Bowls. Hail Nation. Our winningest coach is Joe Gibbs, and that's Coach Joe Gibbs, and that's part of a trivia question that I have for you at the end. So hit that subscribe button and share your comments, your thoughts, and all that. And here we go. All right. George Preston Marshall was a wealthy entrepreneur who owned a Washington, D.C. business called the Palace Laundry. Later, his business skills led him to meet George Halas, the owner of the Chicago Bears. And he was the one that persuaded George Preston Marshall to invest in an NFL team. The 1920s was a decade of tremendous prosperity by the U.S. You know, lots of people forked out money to go to football games, boxing matches, baseball games, pro and college events alike. So, formed in 1920, the American Professional Football Association was changed to the National Football League the following year, 1921. Later on, after a couple of financial failures, George Preston Marshall, he was optimistic to overcome the adversities that he faced. So he purchased a team called the Boston Braves, who later became the Boston Redskins, and they played their games in Fenway Park. In 1933, the Redskins had a powerful 1-2 punch at running back, led by halfback Cliff Battles and fullback Jim Musick. And here's an interesting fact. Musick led the NFL in rushing with 809 yards, followed by Battles. He had 737 yards. And also, Battles had a single rushing game that produced 215 yards against the New York Giants. And it marked the first time in NFL history that a running back ran for over 200 yards in an NFL football game. You thought it was O.J. Simpson, didn't you? Nope. Cliff Battles. Okay. Anyway, 1933, the Redskins finished with a record of 5 wins, 5 losses, and 2 ties. 1934, the following season, they finished with a 500 mark at 6 wins, 6 losses. Fast forward 3 years, George Preston Marshall moved his team to Washington in 1937, which sparked their inaugural season, the first season in the nation's capital. And Redskins fever took over the nation's capital right around the time of World War II. From 1937 to about 1945, the Redskins were a dynasty that featured 5 NFL championship appearances, 2 league titles, and a 70, 27, and 5 record during that 9-year span. Pretty good. The Chicago Bears were the rivals that matched their dominance in that era. They met in 4 of those championship games, with each team winning twice. Redskins are the better team. The Redskins won the championship their very first season at Wrigley Field in Chicago. There were 15-degree temperatures in a hard-fought game. That was a cold game, bro. I thought Lambeau Field in Green Bay was cold. Woo! Anyway, the field was frozen with ice and snow. Both teams wore basketball sneakers. Isn't that interesting? To tread the slippery surface. as the players were bruised and bloody. It was a hard-hitting game and it was a cold game, brutal game. A rookie sensation by the name of, you've heard of him, Slinging Sammy Baugh, that famous legendary quarterback of our Skins, engineered the win as he completed 17 of 34 passes for 352 yards and 3 touchdowns en route for a 28-21 win over the Chicago Bears. After the game, Sammy Baugh quoted, saying, I never saw so much blood after a ball game in my life. Every time you hit the frozen ground, you'd be bleeding. Wow. That was a brutal game. You know, I think back in those times, the hitting was more brutal. There wasn't as many rules, pansy rules, that they got today, because it's almost like flag football or tag football or what have you. But back in those days, it was brutal. And he said every time you hit the frozen ground, you'd be bleeding. Wow, isn't that something? What a brutal game. That's what I call a shiny gem, a bright moment in Redskins history, as the Redskins once again won that championship game in Wrigley Field, 28-21, led by Sammy Baugh, who quarterbacked and engineered our Skins to a win. 17 of 34 passes, 352 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Now, for some facts for the Redskins Nation. Okay, I got a question for all you Skins Nation fans out there, and you can leave it in your comments, and the next segment, I'll have the answer for you. Okay, Coach Joe Gibbs has the 4th highest winning percentage as a Redskins coach. What was the percentage, and what was his regular season record as a coach, and what was his record as coach of the Redskins in the playoffs? I'll have both of those answers on the next segment. And also, I have one more question. In the Ring of Honor, how many Redskin players have been inducted into the Ring of Honor? I'll have that answer on the next segment. And one more. What is the all-time Monday Night Football record of the Washington Redskins? All right, let's fast forward. Let's go to some brief Redskins news. Of course, recently that linebacker Mason Foster was released. So I guess they're clearing up the salary cap space, I guess, to make room for other players or bringing in other signees. Left tackle Trent Williams has not reported to training camp. We've had 2 days of training camp so far, and no word on him. And there was a recent interview with our newly acquired strong safety, Landon Collins, and he gave a message to us Redskin fans, and he said this year he's going to bring it, and he said we're going to make the playoffs. So I believe that. Speaking of that, there was some comments made by the Sports Junkie. It's a radio broadcast in the D.C. area, and they predicted that our Washington Redskins will end up with a 4-12 record. And when I heard that, I about threw up, because that makes me sick to my stomach. Come on, a radio station in our own city, you don't have faith in our team, and you want to go on the record and say that we're going to have a 4-12 record? Really? Look at the last 2 years. We've had over 20 some odd injuries of people on injured reserve the last 2 years, and we finished 7-9 in both seasons. So what they're saying is we're going to regress this year. I don't think so. My personal prediction, and also if you'd like to leave your predictions in the comments, please do that also. I believe this year that we will go 11-5. I will go on record. Yes, I will say it. We will have 11 wins, 5 losses, and we will make the playoffs, and we will win in the first round in advance. All right. Last thing I want to look at is the upcoming schedule. Please forgive me, I didn't write down the dates. I'll come back on the next segment and do it. But I just want to go through the list real quick of who we play from beginning to end. First game of the year will be at Philly. Then we're at home against Dallas. We have a home game Monday night against the Chicago Bears. Away at the New York Giants. Week 5, we're at home against the defending NFL champions, New England Patriots. Week 6, we're at Miami. Week 7, at home against San Francisco. Weeks 8 and 9 will be away. Week 8 will be away at Minnesota. Match up against our former quarterback, Kirk Cousins. That ought to be interesting. Then we have a away game at Buffalo. Week 10, we have a bye week. The heal up, come back. Week 11 at home against the New York Jets. Followed by week 12, we have another home game against the Detroit Lions. Then we have two away games. Week 13 will be at Carolina. Week 14, tough game, will be at Green Bay at Lambeau Field. That ought to be an interesting game. Week 15, we get Philly again at home. That ought to be an interesting game. That the last 3 weeks should will be very important for playoff implications, and I believe that we will follow through. We will win the division. Week 15, once again, we play Philly. Week 16, we play the New York Giants. And week 17, we play the Dallas Cowgirls. So, with all that said, my name is Fred Watson. Hail Skins Nation. We're going to do it up this year. It's a different year. Football is right around the corner. Can't wait. A couple more weeks. Should be going into preseason. And I will see you on the next segment. And until then, Hail Skins Nation. Peace.